What if you could generate tens of millions in profit without new technology, without capital investment, and without a big transformation program? Welcome to Transformation Talks, your guide to navigating complex change. Each episode brings you expert insights, practical strategies, and real-world stories on delivering impactful transformation. From managing technology rollouts to driving cultural shifts, we'll help you tackle the challenges of change and build lasting success. I'm Hayley Sage, Director of Marketing for Project one of the UK's leading management consultancies, and for the next 20 minutes, your podcast host. Today, I'm joined by Project One consultant Richard Carter to talk about his latest programme for one of the UK's big four private healthcare providers that delivered 35 million EBITDA impact in just 2.5 years. And this was built entirely from ideas coming from frontline teams and senior management. It's been called the Miracle Programme by the COO, but the reality is that it's not magic at all. It's about simple operational improvements, commercial thinking, and empowering the people closest to patients. Today, we'll unpack how it worked, what surprised everyone, and what other organisations can learn from it. Richard, welcome to the podcast booth.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Great to see you. And it sounds like you've been busy. So, start us off. Can you tell us what challenge the organisation was facing when this programme began?
Sure. The company had a number of material challenges, including kind of a general profit margin erosion from some parts of their service lines, a highly decentralised operating model with a strong sense of site autonomy and lots of local variation, underperforming core assets, and a general backdrop of a high level of organisational turbulence with acquisitions and restructuring. So that the COO needed to make a positive impact to the bottom line without having to make material capital investments and not wanting to further lean upon an already overstretched IT department.
And that COO called it the Miracle Programme. So why do you think it earned that reputation?
Simply, it was because the programme was able to deliver material in-year cost savings and revenue enhancements with a relatively low investment. So when compared to other investments that the company was making, the investment in this programme was modest and the returns relatively high.
And that's one of the most interesting things about this programme, isn't it? That it didn't rely on that material investment. So what were the principles that guided that work?
Firstly, to engage broadly across the business at all levels to capture ideas about what could be done to improve efficiency and where revenues could be uplifted. Secondly, to give accountability for the delivery of the opportunity to those closest to the issue. Each project within the programme was sponsored by a hospital director, meaning that we utilised the expertise and experience of the most senior talent from across the business and ensure that solutions we put in place were pragmatic and doable. And then lastly, to provide active support to the delivery teams to drive their implementation with a relatively small central programme team.
And there is, of course, a huge commercial element to this programme as well.
Absolutely. As an organisation, their first priority has always been patient safety and providing excellent care, which permeated all aspects of the business. That being said, through working with the delivery teams on this programme, we took a very deliberate and unapologetic commercial perspective to each of the opportunities. The remit was not to standardise or to focus on best practice for its own sake, but rather to be religious about only making changes that would make a direct impact to the bottom line. If an opportunity was a good idea but was unlikely to impact the bottom line, then we would quickly drop it and move on to the next one.
And there was around 60 mostly non-IT projects. Of all of these initiatives, which one probably had the biggest impact?
The biggest impact project was called Radiology Ways of Working, and that drove efficiencies and increased productivity by leading and engaging with a community of radiology clinicians and administrators. And that project delivered an EBITDA impact of over £1 million across 2 consecutive years. The approach we took was fairly simple. Firstly, to align the teams and their individual KPIs by establishing common performance targets for the MRI leads, radiology managers, and the radiology admin team leads. Secondly, we developed a radiology dashboard that gathered weekly site-level performance data that was accessible to all and encouraged a healthy, competitive mindset that focused the teams on the commercial outcomes in addition to their clinical outcomes that they monitored as a matter of course. And lastly, community. We brought the radiology teams together monthly to share ideas and best practice that drove continuous improvements, enhanced patient experience, whilst establishing a commercially focused culture within the department. And as part of those community engagements, we regularly reviewed progress against the agreed targets. So in summary, it was around alignment, real-time data, and community.
Okay. And what surprised you most about the changes that delivered the biggest results?
The biggest results came from the projects that developed the strongest sense of community, whether that's in radiology or in theatres. The surprise was that people were keen to engage in the spirit of healthy competition across the sites, and they also appreciated the interest and support from the central team, and were also really keen to learn from each other.
So using the power of the team.
Indeed.
One of Project One's most loved values. And a big theme here was that it was done with teams, not to the teams. So how did you achieve that?
Firstly, by appointing a hospital director as the sponsor of the project who had an interest or expertise that related to that particular opportunity. So that was critical in giving credibility to each of the projects. Secondly, by identifying several subject matter experts, SMEs, from different disciplines and locations from across the business to ask for their support on getting clear on what the problem was we're trying to solve, how we're going to implement a solution, and then planning the implementation. And then lastly, by engaging with the team regularly to support them in their implementation.
And you achieved a lot in such a short time.
Yeah, moving quickly was really critical, trying things out and adapting as we went. Having a deliberate bias for speed and action was instrumental in building momentum and creating wins that we could refer to. It was positively about solutions being good enough, not perfect.
And these were essentially side of the desk initiatives for many people. So how important was putting a program management structure and governance around the work?
In short, it was foundational. Having a small central program team, we had a program manager, a business analyst, a business intelligence analyst, and finance controllers. And that was instrumental in driving the engagement of the business and always ensuring that we're able to track the impact of each of the separate projects. With regard to governance, having a formal governance structure with executive level sponsorship was critical in ensuring that we were pursuing the appropriate opportunities and in providing access to the required people and resources as needed. We were very fortunate in having a very supportive exco sponsor and a fantastic day-by-day business sponsor who brought lots of energy and enthusiasm that impacted not just on the central program team, but on each of the teams that we were engaged with across the business.
So it's all about the people and the right mindset, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Always comes back to the people. And the program's now been running for around 2.5 years and delivered 35 million so far. So what happens next?
Basically, to deliver on the next multi-million pound EBITDA target. It was always thought that the delivery of these broadly non-IT projects would get harder and harder as the low-hanging fruit opportunities are exhausted. At what point the organisation will run out of ideas and opportunities has yet to be seen. What the programme has done is to help develop a mindset of continuous improvement by promoting the idea of re-examining how things get done.
Amazing. Such a fascinating story. If another organisation wanted to replicate this success, what are the 3 things that they should start with?
Firstly, appoint an energetic and respected sponsor that is accountable for the overall programme delivery. Can't say enough about the criticality and importance of active sponsorship. Secondly, putting in place a small central programme team with diverse skill sets and appropriate capacity. And then thirdly, something we've touched on before, engaging across the business using different channels and forums to gather ideas on cost saving and revenue enhancement opportunities.
So the lesson here is it's not about large transformation budgets or complex technology, which we often see. It's about unlocking the ideas, energy, and the insight that already exists inside the organisation.
Absolutely.
And one final question that I ask everybody in the podcast booth. So, biggest lesson, thinking back to the start of your career, if you knew then what you know now, what advice would you give to yourself?
For me, it would be that in whatever situation or role you'll find yourself in, to do what you can to be of service to others around you. If you can do that, then the rest of it will take care of itself.
Excellent. Wise words. Is there anything else that you'd like to cover that we've not talked about this program?
One thing we haven't spoken about is the actual simplicity of how the projects within the program got delivered. The tools and methodology we applied were really basic and really simple. Get lots of ideas was the first step. Have a mechanism to filter and prioritize them. Get the right allocation of HD sponsors, hospital director sponsors to each of the projects, and then make sure you create a clear, simple definition of scope. So what we did was to create a one-page scope definition for each of the separate projects to make sure that scope definition identified what was the problem, what's the objectives, risks, issues, costs and benefits. And creating clarity amongst a team of people who have an interest in it was really instrumental in making sure that we had a solid basis to move forward from. The second key discipline was around, if that's the scope, let's create a project plan which will then deliver it against that scope, and then engaging the teams on a regular basis. So in terms of the project management disciplines that underpinned it, it was really basic, really simple stuff. It certainly isn't rocket science, but just some kind of instrumental disciplines that really enable us to make sure we're doing the right thing and track how we were delivering week in, week out.
Wow. I always love speaking to our consultants and how humble you are about the work that you do. Massive impact in this program, and essentially you've made the complex simple. So brilliant story. Thank you so much for sharing it with us, and thank you for being our guest in the podcast booth.
Been a pleasure.
We'll see you again. Thanks for tuning in to Transformation Talks. We hope you found today's insights valuable in your journey to leading successful transformation. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and share it with your network. Stay connected with us for more expert insight and stories on delivering complex change and transformation in any organisation. See you next time.